The High Court in Pretoria has heard that several people had to carry Senzo Meyiwa's body to the car after he was shot. Meyiwa's close friend, Dumelo Madlala, who was present when Meyiwa was shot, is continuing to give evidence in the soccer star's murder trial. Madlala says people had already gathered outside the house soon after the incident and assisted them to carry him to the vehicle. But he could not say how many people had helped carry Meyiwa to the vehicle before he was rushed to the hospital. Meyiwa was shot and killed in 2014 in an alleged robbery. He was visiting the home of his then-girlfriend, Kelly Khumalo. For more on this, we cross now to Chriselda Lewis, who's been following proceedings at the High Court. A very good afternoon, Chriselda. What's the latest?
Well, Nompo, as expected, more details about what happened after Senzo Meyiwa had been killed. As you correctly point out, Dumelo Madlala, close friend of Senzo Meyiwa, detailing where exactly the bloodstains were found inside the house. You would recall yesterday he had detailed after coming out of the bedroom where he had hidden. He says that he went towards the dining room area and Senzo Meyiwa's body was lying in between the couch and the TV stand. Let's take a listen to what he said about the bloodstains when he was questioned about whether Senzo Meyiwa was bleeding.
It's what I referred to earlier on about his blood wasn't flowing. It was just blood stains that were on the floor.
Now, these blood spots, where were they in relation to where the deceased was lying?
It was on the floor where he was lying.
Chriselda, what happened next? You can proceed, Chriselda.
Well, also details, Nompo, about how Senzo Meyiwa was taken from inside the house. Dumelo Madlala says several people had carried Senzo Meyiwa. He described him as being extremely heavy at the time and says they struggled to put him inside the car. They had to fold his legs. He says they put Senzo Meyiwa in the car that was driven by Kelly Khumalo, which belonged to the deceased, and says that at some point Kelly Khumalo was driving and speeding over some humps, such that her sister had told her or had cautioned her because of the speed at which and the bumps that they had encountered as they were headed towards the hospital. And he says when they got there, they asked her for a stretcher, but a wheelchair was brought, and then they asked for a stretcher again. When the stretcher came, they took Senzo Meyiwa inside, and then now he goes on to describe when a nurse returned with an x-ray and broke the news of Senzo Meyiwa's passing.
Noma ngayazi ngaki kwaseqhamuka yena unesi loya ephethe isithombe se-x-ray.
Okay, bambe lapho. After a while, although I don't know after how many minutes or after how long, the nurse appeared and the nurse had a picture of the x-ray.
Yes.
Wayese ecela umuntu omdala kwase kusondela umakakhe.
And then the nurse requested for an elderly person, and then Kelly's mother came forward.
Yes.
Yebo.
Lapho umakhe naye weza kithi esekhala.
Kelly's mother then came to us crying.
Wasitshela ukuthi kusenza kasekho nani so wonke umuntu wayesekhala nje.
She then informed us that Senzo had passed away, and then everyone inside there then started crying.
Yes.
Yebo.
Then ngasicela ukumbona, ngase ngicela mina ukuyombona ke. Then sahamba saboniswa.
I then requested to go and see him, and then we went. He was shown to us.
Then uneslo wangilethela amanzi nani because bese ngihleli kwenye indawo ngathi ikhishi nje khona lapha engihlalise khona ineslo.
Then the nurse brought me some water because the nurse made me to sit in a place that looked like a kitchen.
Madlala also spoke about a second time when he went to go and view Senzo Meyiwa's body, and he says that second instance, Kelly Khumalo had followed him, and this is what he had to say about the interaction that he had with the deceased there and what followed.
Why stretching?
He was lying on a stretcher. He was covered.
Yes.
Then okwesibili sengimbone okwesibili ngihamba ngedwa babengafuni ngangena ngenkani then wangilandela uKelly.
All right. When I went to view him for the second time, I was alone because they didn't want to go and view him again, but Kelly followed me. Yebo.
So mangifika elele bengikhala so ngimbuza Senzo kanti ngibizela ukuthi ngizobona lento la.
When I got there, he was lying and I was crying, and I asked him, Senzo, is this, you called me to come and see this?
Well, Madlala also describes after seeing Senzo Meyiwa, he had headed back out to where he says a number of people had gathered at the hospital, and says what looks to have been a scuffle between Kelly Khumalo and Senzo Meyiwa's wife, Mandisa, because he says that there had been some hair on the floor. Let's take a listen.
Bese ngisixaka la mongini iminyango lwamaglass la ngaphakathi la kulindwa khona ngama-bench khona because I think angazi uMandisa beba bambana noKelly because bekunaney'nwele phansi.
Asibambe lapho ke ne iminyango yeglass ngithi la kungenwa khona. Thereafter, my lord, it was chaotic. There was this chaos now. There are some glass doors at the entrance part of the hospital. I don't know, I think it was Mandisa and Kelly who were at each other, and there were even hair that was lying on the floor on the.
So the point at which we're getting at now, Nompo, just before we went to the lunch break, is that we're hearing now that after Kelly Khumalo, her mother, as well as the current witness on the stand, the child were taken to Malberton, to the house that Senzo Meyiwa had shared with Kelly Khumalo, as told by Tumelo Madlala. We're hearing that police had arrived at that premises but could not go through because of security at the gate. So at some point, Madlala says, police managed to gain access, but Kelly Khumalo had instructed that the police had not be let in. But when she saw them come through, Tumelo Madlala says that she instructed that the electricity be switched off, and he then says it seems that Kelly Khumalo was talking to someone on the phone, and he describes as an instruction, and then all of a sudden the police had left. He also says at some point the father of Longwe Twala, who was one of the occupants inside the house, Longwe Twala, was inside the house. He says that Longwe Twala's father, Chico Selo Twala, he's not sure of the dates, but days after Senzo Meyiwa was killed, Chico Selo Twala had come to the Malberton house and asked Kelly Khumalo whether she wanted to go on an overseas holiday, and this was just days after Senzo Meyiwa had been killed. So we're certainly getting some details now about what happened after Senzo Meyiwa had been killed, how he was transferred or transported to the hospital, who declared him dead, who told the family that he had passed on, and the days that ensued afterwards. And just before we wrap up then, Nompu, we also heard just before we went to the break, when Madlala was asked by the State Prosecutor Advocate George Baloy about an identity parade that he had attended to, he said he had gone to an identity parade but he never pointed out anyone in that identity parade who he could say was inside the house when the time Senzo Meyiwa was killed. We'll resume at 2 o'clock.
Thanks very much, my colleague there, Chriselda Lewis.